I find him, he admits readily that he can be very obnoxious, and I find him very obnoxious and sometimes very hard to suffer. The way his attitude gets, and hypercritical sometimes, and just I don't like it sometimes. Some of the violent ranting, the overly indulgent ranting, like he says, he's letting himself off the leash. I don't like some of it. But, you give the man kudos for at least having the courage to stand in the face of evil and teach and talk, speak truth to power. Okay, because this is what has to be done. It's biblical. As a good Christian, he feels compelled to, expose the inconsistencies about 9/11. And now there's a group of over 2,200 architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. Do you ever hear the mainstream media bringing up this group, trying to educate the public, trying to inform the public right? No. They're into malinformation, malevolent information. So it's not so much disinformation or misinformation. I guess those things are part and parcel of malevolent, malignant information. And that's what they do. They don't want you to know the truth. They don't want the people empowered and just throw these criminals out, whether they're in political positions or private. It doesn't matter. Okay, if they're evil, they're evil. And we need to do away with them. We need to stand against them. If they kill some of us, they kill us. But jumping on the bull and grabbing his horns, that's what we have to do. You want to play hardball? Well, here we're going to play it. And we're going to do it through information, education that empowers people and make them strong so that they can argue correctly and coherently and cogently, logically, and say, I'm willing to do the math with you. Don't try to tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm some harebrained radical dreamer, some, idealist trying to fight the good fight, and I'm going to turn things around. I'm going to heal the division in the land. Well, I can only try. If I fail, I fail, but God will judge me for what I did for that cause. And he'll judge you and him and her and all of us as individuals. We'll all answer individually at the end of the day. Yeah, and this idea, like Reagan said, he said, trust but verify. Okay, so you give people the benefit of the doubt, but you have a right to investigate and research on your own. And if you deduce and conclude something differently than what's the main talking point that's coming from the mainstream media, who is being controlled by the grand puppeteers, then that's okay. That's good. You have an obligation, a responsibility, a duty to do that thing. Question known liars? I mean, what the hell's wrong with that? Is that not the right thing to do? But yet, how dare you suggest that, like Bill Clinton in 9/11? I mean, what did he have to do with it? Well, in order to plant those buildings, it would have taken years, so it would have overlapped his administration if they were planting those buildings for implosion, for breading for 9/11, to usher it in to allow these terrorists. I'm not saying they weren't terrorists on the planes and hijacked them and flew them into the buildings, but the architects and engineers say it's impossible. It's preposterous to suggest they could have fallen in their footprint like that. Those buildings were rigged to implode, to be brought down in their footprint. Okay? So some people allowed it to happen. Let's just put it that way. And I don't know who it was, and I hope it comes out, and I hope that they're aptly prosecuted, let's say. But this is scary, man. We're on the precipice of something earth shaking, like the earth has never been shaken before. Okay, that's all I'm saying here. Last week I stated there was 57 candidates for governor in California. Actually, it was only 27. So I just wanted to. Whenever I find, I discover I'm wrong about something, I'd like to correct it. I don't notice it sometimes, so I'm uploading the video. Santa Fe shooting in Texas. There was one kid was from this area, from Chico, California. One that was killed in that. It was strictly demonic. I mean, let's face it. Anybody that would do that, this guy, everyone thought he was pretty normal, but then turns out he says he had a justification because he was bullied. Well, everybody that was bullied, which is everybody, by the way, committed a mass killing at their high school. We have a big problem in the land. So the guy's a nut. He was demon possessed. That's how else do you explain something like that? We had some couple of guys that were bicycling in Washington, and one of them was killed by a mountain lion. Pretty gnarly stuff, man. Wild. It's part of the curse, I believe, that befell the earth. We're all creation groaned under the weight of sin. Because it's predicted that one day the lions will lay down with the lambs and eat straw. That's the paradigm to come in the new age, apparently, when God's will is accomplished on earth. A mountain lion would never attack a person in that scenario. Let's see, Trump now, it's been proved that he was spied on by the FBI, and that's factual, and more is about to come out. But, I mean, we all already knew that. I mean, they have a million and one ways to spy on us, so the idea that Trump was being spied on, it's not like a big surprise, but it is illegal. This FISA court and all this stuff that was granted to the Democratic Party, I mean, they politicize it. You see, this is what's so wrong, is politicizing these high-ranking law enforcement agencies like the FBI. You can't have that. You can't have them picking on your political opponents and using them as a tool. And that's exactly what went on here. And the mainstream media is still playing into that wheelhouse. They're saying, no, this is the right way to think, is think that Trump's an evil criminal colluding with the Russians when, you know, what Hillary did was in front of everybody's nose. I mean, her appealing to the immigrants and politicizing that, saying, if you're Latin America, come here illegally, like Obama ushering all the illegal immigrants in. You know, this DACA and all this stuff, and just laying out the welcome mat where our own homeless citizens are dying out in the cold, Native American citizens. And this is what Obama did. He made homelessness far worse, poverty far worse, the wealth imbalance far worse. And so it's got momentum now. And so we've seen a period where it's taken time. Hopefully homelessness will start drying up. And maybe, you know, the government will grow a pair and grow a conscience and start really seeing that it's their responsibility because they allow the problems to be created. That's why the government's at fault. They've got to really take a hand in fixing this thing, a tangible hand in fixing these problems because they've created. Now, who pays? I'm telling you, you know, you're going to save a lot of money in the long run. I've already talked about how I'm a fiscal conservative. I'm very prudent. I know what I'm talking about here. Okay, I don't believe in the welfare state. I don't believe in that stuff. I believe in sound economic policies that allow prosperity across the board. That's where it leads. That's a natural progression that happens automatically under true capitalist precepts and principles being adhered to. So that's what I'm for. But the government's at fault. They allowed it. They're the ones that validated '08. Okay, so yeah, the government's at fault. They broke it. They got to fix it. Isn't that fair and reasonable, logical? But, you know, Hillary and the Chinese, too. I mean, this is another thing. You know, why we didn't hitch our trade wagon to Latin America is not by accident. They want this desperate, hungry pool of people to tap into at will. Okay, they love that. Right next door to America. So, no, they didn't want Latin America well-heeled. They didn't want to start opening trade with Latin America. They picked China across the sea. And look at the heinous human rights violations of that nation compared to Latin America. I mean, yeah, Latin America's got a lot. I mean, I've been all the way down to Costa Rica, and I was in Guatemala and El Salvador. I saw the cops, how they march around with AK-47s, whatever the machine gun of the time was, automatic or semi-automatic rifle was at the time, let's put it that way. But I was a young teen of 14, and I remember it. So I know they've got a lot of oppression and repression and a lot of problems that are created. They got a lot of kleptocrats and oligarchs and dictator-like people that don't care about others. They just care about themselves, and you see all the problems that are manifested from that. But we would have done well to enrich the nations south of the border in America. It would have really helped. We see a hell of a lot less immigration, okay, and maybe it'd be easier for us to immigrate down there. Okay, but you see, these people know what they're doing. They plan everything out. It's geopolitics, all this geoeconomics. It's all planned out. They just know what they're doing. They're playing chess, and they don't have a conscience, and they change the rules at will because they can, because they are in the positions of power to be arbitrary and capricious and dictatorial about the rules. They're controlling everything. So often they're controlling the professors in certain jobs in the universities and the mainstream media, which are the main forms of education for the people. So we're getting maleducation here and there in the next place, and everybody thinks that's the intellectual way to believe, is the way the status quo establishment, this trajectory of death and destruction and misery. Just that's common sense. Just keep going along to get along, man. Just keep banging your head against the wall, and eventually the wall will break, right? You'll break free from, and you don't have to ever deal with the masses and the plight of the struggling poor and the downtrodden, and just keep going that way, even though you know that you're running from what eventually is going to catch up to you and destroy you too. Okay, so God help us again. God help us all. I heard a piece on, I think it was CBS Sunday Morning. I don't know, but they talked this company out there. It's called Medical Debt Rest in Peace. Look it up. If you've got excess medical debt, look it up. It seems like a really good dude running this company, but they have gotten people's medical debt. They pay, pennies on the dollar, if not completely extinguished. So look into it. Look into it. Al Gore's exceedingly incendiary, divisive, malicious speech at a college commencement I saw recently. It was repugnant, repellent. He's such an elitist. I'm sorry, and I said I wasn't going to name names, but he is such a figurehead, a symbol, an archetype for the madness for this in-your-face hypocrisy. Okay. That I have to name him by name, and the guy, he's so nonchalant about it, and he seems so calloused and indifferent and complacent about the truth, and just this idea like he's completely and absolutely utterly possessed with no hope that he's right and everybody else is wrong on this issue of climate change, when the science says, listen, there's never been a time in history when there's been any constant on the earth in terms of the climate. And so all they talk about is climate change and how humans are responsible and how we've got to impoverish the people. That's all they've got up their sleeve. Won't talk about releasing disruptive technology because that would affect his profits, because he's well invested in oil. So you understand that they don't want disruptive technology out there, clean, renewable energy sources. It's that evil. I mean, they're that evil, and they're that appearing to be good and altruistic. He appears to be completely he's the one to follow. If you value your conscience, then you value what Al Gore says. Then you value the earth. And he's the only one that knows. He's the master scientist. He's the god of the earth and his ilk. And they're going to save you. And this is how. They've got to impoverish you so that you can't burn energy. You can't afford to. You can't drive your car. You can't heat your house. You can't cool it. You can't take trips. You can't fly on planes and all this stuff, because that burns CO2, and that's how you're destroying the earth, greenhouse gases and climate change and all this. Do you understand? It's maddening to me. These people are insane, and they look like they're of completely sound mind, and it's unnerving, and I just got to get that off my chest, okay? But I find it repugnant, repellent, repulsive. There aren't enough adjectives to describe how I feel about it. Alex Jones was pointing out how we're made in the image and likeness of God recently. And, of course, earlier I pointed out how we are. But we got to remember it's what's inside that counts. That godly instinct you have in your heart, soul, your spirit, your mind, your conscience, your integrity, all these things. These are the fail-safes God gave us, the default that he gave us. If we tap into it, that's being rendered, allowing ourselves to be rendered in his image and likeness of our own free will and accord. That's what it means. And you've got to make a deliberate, concerted effort not to be evil, or you will be. So you've got to cling to working yourself in that direction of being more like him and his image and likeness, and finding out what that is. because it's not hidden. His character and nature is in full view of everybody. He wants us to know what he's like. Otherwise, how can we emulate him? So, understand that and the people of this world, okay, they are want you to be rendered in their image and likeness. It's satanic. It's demonic. So at the end of the day, this is a whole spiritual battle, and they are demonic and they are ugly, and they hate humanity because humanity values their conscience, their godly nature, their godly instincts, and these two cannot coexist, and they know it. So they know they've decided it's a fight to the finish, and the only way that they can prevail is by destroying the good, because they know eventually good is going to get its footing and it's going to start overcoming the evil.